Hi everyone! Today's video is about my 2020 books, and as we all know, 2020 was a weird year. I didn't really have enough time to read because I usually read on my way to work, and this year I've been working from home. So I haven't been able to find like a replacement time for my reading. So I've only got 10 books, but still there's loads of good ones in here. And I'm going to separate them into the different genres and categories. So if you want to skip to some of them, I'll have the timings below so you can check those out. I'm gonna start with science fiction, but more on the adult science fiction, and I'll start with Recursion. This one I read because the same author wrote this book called Dark Matter that I read a couple years ago, and I loved it. It's one of my favorite like adult science fiction books I've ever read, and I decided to give this new one Recursion a go. Loved it, incredible. It's really good. He really talks about the actual physics of things, but doesn't make it complicated if you don't have a physics or science background. The premise is that there are people that have memories that are not theirs. Yeah, they remember things that didn't happen to them, and like it's a bit weird, like what is reality, what is happening here, why are they remembering things that they're not supposed to be remembering. So it follows a detective, I think, and he tries to solve the mystery in a way. So yeah, it talks a lot about reality, yeah, memory and thoughts and things like that, but with that science fiction twist. The next one I have is The Three-Body Problem. This one I found out because it came up on a list of books that Obama read and he really liked, and I saw it was science fiction and I was like, oh, I'm gonna read this. If he liked it, if it's good enough for Obama, it must be good enough for me. So I really liked it. It is the first part of a trilogy, and it does feel a bit just like an introduction to the story. So when you finish it, you're still, you know, left needing more, like the story's not done. I'll have to read part 2 and 3 next year. My sister has read them and I think she liked them more than the first one, so that's good. But it basically talks about that first contact or connection with an alien species. I don't want to say too much, but yeah, it treats it quite different. If you guys have seen movies like Arrival or Contact, it's quite different to that, but in a way similar because of that first contact. But it talks a lot about how society would think about it and yeah, what would happen before that first contact and all that stuff. My only thing about this book is it does go a lot into some of the physics issues. I'm studying physics at the minute, about to finish in a couple months a degree, and I even thought it was a bit much. So if you don't have that background or that interest, there are pages that you're gonna want to skip. I skipped some of them, but you don't need them for the rest of the story, so that's fine. But that's my only issue with it. It goes into too much detail about some scientific and physics stuff that I just, you know, I love physics, but when I'm reading a book like this, I don't necessarily want to have all that. I don't want to be studying when I'm reading fiction. I'll read the other 2 parts next year hopefully, and I'll let you guys know what I think. Hopefully they're really good. And now I'm gonna go into young adult dystopian books, which is probably one of my favorite genres just because it's, you know, combines that fantasy and science fiction with the young adult side, which is just a lot easier to read, so I can read them a lot faster. So I do have 4 books in here. The first 2 are from the same author, but I'm gonna start with Unwind. Unwind follows a boy and a couple of other people that were supposed to be unwind. In this society, parents can choose their kids to basically get killed and have their organs donated for other people that need it. Bit weird concept. This author is quite interested in what could happen in the future with death. You'll see on the next one as well, but an interesting thought, but weird at the same time. So basically this kid is supposed to be like that, but he escapes, and it just follows his story and what happens to him and all that stuff. And like I said, very easy to read. It's also the first part of a trilogy. I haven't read the others, but I'll see if I can give them a go next year as well. The second one is The Toll, which is the 3rd part. Now another trilogy, but now this is the 3rd part of Scythe, and I've talked about this many times before. Loved every single book in this trilogy. The premise of the whole world is that because of scientific advancements and things like that, medical advancements, people don't actually die of diseases anymore. So they create this council, I guess, of people who are scythes, and they basically go and kill people to combat overpopulation and things like that. So it's quite interesting. Like I said, they both talk about sort of death, things that happen in the future, but really good. This third part was very, very good for a third part. I tend to feel like third parts just want to get it done, but this one was actually really good. You do need to read part 1 and 2 to understand what's happening in part 3, but I did like that it introduces new characters and new themes and things like that that maybe were mentioned in other books but not into detail, so it kind of feels quite fresh and like you're reading more new stuff rather than just trying to end a story. The next one is Ready Player 2, which is the second part of Ready Player 1, and unfortunately this one wasn't my favorite. I loved the first one, and this one follows like a similar process for the story, which I liked, but my issue with it is that it goes a bit too much into detail of 80s movies and songs and characters and things like that I'm not particularly interested in. So it does have a lot of things in there, a lot of pages that I didn't want to read, a lot of pages that I just skipped. So if you didn't love the first one, don't read the second one, but if you loved the first, read the second. It's still worth it, but it does have a lot of stuff that I was just like, I just don't really care about this movie in the 80s that I've never seen, I've never heard of, I'm never gonna watch, so I just don't really care. So I just had to skip through a bunch of pages just to get to the overall story. And then I have The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is a prequel to The Hunger Games. And this one was another disappointing book. Talks about President Snow when he was young and sort of tries to, you know, make you feel for him and show you his story and whatever you want, but we all know President Snow in The Hunger Games is a bad man. This book doesn't really make me feel bad for him, doesn't make me feel like anything different about him, and it also was very slow. When I got to sort of like the middle of the book, to me that's the book ended, done. The story to me ended there, so the second part took me ages to read because it was just so slow. I did not care anymore. Yeah, I've heard a few people thought the same. So I don't think it's worth it. I don't care that I read it. It's a bit meh, which is sad because I loved The Hunger Games. It is what it is. I did not care about President Snow. They should have done it about other characters that I could have cared a bit more about. Then we go into non-fiction, and we've got The Ride of a Lifetime, which is Autobiography. Bob Iger, which was the previous Disney CEO. He was CEO for like 15 years. So he talks about his life and how he got to Disney and what he did there and all that stuff. But at the same time, he does talk about how to be a boss, how to talk to other teams, how to be better at work and things like that, which I quite like. So he does have autobiography, here's my life, but also here's some interesting advice for your life and your professional life. So that was really good. I love Disney, everything that has to do with Disney, love, love, love. So I really like the book, and yeah, I think even if you don't like Disney, you're still gonna like the book because it doesn't really, you know, it only talks about anecdotes and the story of the company, not, you know, other stuff Disney related. And like I said, the advice, professional advice side is quite good, so recommend it as well. The other non-fiction book I have is called Unnatural Causes, and it's also autobiography from this man who is, or was, he's still alive but retired, forensic pathologist in the UK, mostly in the 80s and 90s. So the stuff in it's a bit dated, but it doesn't matter, it's still quite interesting. He talks about his life and how he got there and his family and all that stuff, but he talks a lot about autopsies, the cases that he worked on, what it means to, you know, like have a lot of bruising on your face when you're dead, and like the process, the biological process of death and things like that, which I find quite interesting. I used to want to be a forensic pathologist when I was a kid, so very, very interesting. And yeah, all the medical side to it I really, really loved. But again, the, you know, for someone who I didn't know who he was before this book, I was very interested in hearing his life, which yeah, it's a good thing because it was written very, very well, very interesting. I kept wanting to read more. And then I've got two fiction books which are just in the fiction bucket because I didn't know where to put them. The first one is The Testaments, which is the second part of The Handmaid's Tale, but you don't have to read The Handmaid's Tale to read this one. I would say they're quite separate standalone books. It doesn't follow the story directly after the first one. There's some characters that are the same, but overall you don't really need to read the first one to read the second one. The book has basically some of the chapters like alternate different points of view, like different people, which was really good. So you see different stories from different parts of that world and that society, which is quite interesting to read. I think I liked it more than the first one just because if you've read the first one, there are some scenes in there that are difficult to read, that it's a bit too much to read. So that doesn't happen as much in the second one, which is good. So I read it a lot better and yeah, was happier while I read it, even though it's not a very happy story anyway, but you know what I mean? Like it was just easier mentally to read. So definitely recommend it. If you haven't read the first one, you don't have to. That second one, I don't think it's part of any of the TV show stuff. It's just a new story, so it hasn't been done on TV yet. So yeah, recommend it 100%. Really, really liked it. And the last one is The Great Gatsby, which it's not the first time I've read it. It won't be the last. I've read it about 5 times, 5 times, I think. Even though I have a huge list of books that I want to read, sometimes I don't feel like reading any of them. So when that happens, I go back to The Great Gatsby because it's quite short compared to a lot of other novels, and I know that I like it, and it's just very different to all the other stuff that I read. So it's quite like it refreshes my brain and it makes me ready for a new dystopia or a new science fiction or whatever it is. So if you've never read it, definitely give it a go. It's very classic literature, very different to the others that I've talked about, and the theme of it's a bit like a love story and you're trying to figure out who Gatsby is and all that stuff, but my favorite part about it is just the symbolism behind everything. It's a rich society in New York in the 20s. Yeah, the symbolism behind it is really, really good, and what it means like for society, and yeah, what it's a love story, but what is the meaning behind it. I first read this book when I was 17 in the US as an exchange student, and my paper was the best one in the class, so I love it since. And yeah, it's just very easy to read, and definitely if you haven't read it yet, give it a go. And yeah, it's just refreshing for me because it's so different from the other stuff I usually read. But that's it for this video. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Hopefully I can read a lot more books in 2021 and do a new video next year. If you have any recommendations, especially within the same genres that I talked about today, then let me know in the comments and I'll definitely give those a go. Always looking for new recommendations. So if you have any good ones, then let me know in the comments, please. But yeah, that's gonna be it. I hope you guys liked it, and I will see you guys later with another video. Bye!